So, how did you feel the first time you heard about racism, whether that bit was like in school or among friends? Have you seen anything racist in your own life? And why do you think people are racist to begin with?
Okay, I guess I'll start. First time I ever experienced racism was probably in elementary school. And I remember I think I was doing like some sort of craft. It was like the craft time, and then I had to go borrow a stick of glue. And I just went to this kid and asked him, "Yo, dog, can I use your glue?" And he was like, "You don't look right." And I was just like, "Wait, why? Why don't it look right? Like it's just something on my face?" And then he said, "Well, my parents are white. What are your parents?" And then I told him, "Oh, well, I don't really have a dad, but my mom is black." And then like he didn't really understand why that was, and then that then got me wondering why I was the way I was, you know, and then sort of just carried that. So that for sure be when I first experienced racism, I would say.
I feel like it's always those unnecessary comments that are made where it makes you think when you never really thought about it before, or you didn't have to think about it and someone says something and then you're like, oh, wait, what? Like it's kind of takes you back a little bit.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important, like, as you grow up, for parents and those around you to really explain to you, like, that everyone's going to be different and you're not going to meet people that look the same as you, whether it's their skin color, their hair color, their eye color. No matter what it is, you're going to meet people that are different than you, and that's totally fine. Because a lot of kids growing up, they don't really get that, and I think they just they don't understand, and then they're kind of ignorant towards it. But that's not really an excuse. So I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think it's important to teach kids at a young age that, like you said, not everyone's gonna look the same, and but that does not make them any less of a person, any less worthy of love or kindness or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it's like interesting because like when I first went to like elementary school, I didn't even know I was Mexican. I just thought everyone was the same, like honestly. And then I saw like, oh, there was like, blacks, whites, Asians, Mexicans, and I was like part of the minority because I went to like an elementary school that was mainly white with the exception like one or two in like each class like of Mexicans or Asians or blacks. So like I just remember growing up with white people and not even like realizing I was in the minority of being not white, I guess. So like when they made those comments towards me, I was like, oh, I don't, why is that funny? And then realizing, oh, it's because I'm not white, I'm a Mexican. So it's like really interesting to see that as well.
Do we want to touch on maybe like why do you think people are racist to begin with?
I feel like stereotypes have a lot to do with it. Like you just assume just because you look at someone's like, oh, well, because they're this race, they do this and they do that. Because they're this race, they're like this or like that. And you just assume that's for everyone, and you don't see them as an individual person. You see it by their race and their skin color. And some people, it's like jokes. Some people, it's just like they don't generally mean it. It's just like they think, oh, stereotypes are just like, oh, playful way of like getting at someone. But then there's actual people that are actual like racists, and they have that genuineness in them that they hate this race for that reason, or they hate that race for that reason because of these stereotypes and like what they do instead of seeing them as a normal person and not actually getting to know them. They just judge a book by its cover, essentially.
There's
Go ahead.
no for sure. There's this quote that's really amazing. African American man. His name is Daryl Davis. And he in his book talking about racism, he posed this question to KKK members and just like your average racist. And his question was, "How can you hate me if you don't even know me?" And I really think that just sums up, in my opinion at least, why racism is a thing. I do think that it comes from understanding and then having fear of understanding. I don't think that people can fully grasp the idea of being on someone else's skin and living the way they do, especially when looking at the media, what's on TV, and extreme cases of all races, people just intentionally and oftentimes unintentionally stereotype and make conclusions in their head again to people that they don't even know, and oftentimes race is then jumbled up into that.
Yeah. I think even growing up, kids, and they still do it, like, no matter what age they are, but I feel like so often we look at people that look like us and we automatically, go to hang out with them and be friends with them. Because I can even look at my friend group and say that we all, like racially look the same. And it's not because it's like meant to happen. I think it just kind of happens, and then people tend to stay away from other races because they assume like, oh, they're different from me in looks, so maybe they're different from me in actions too. And that's not okay, because like you said about stereotypes, it's not always true, and it's important to not judge a book by its cover, because that's the worst possible thing you could do.
Yeah.
So I think it has a lot to do with
I
that.
think it definitely just comes from people believing that other races are different from them.
Yeah.
And they can't involve themselves, or they can't really socialize the way that they would with somebody of the same race because, oh, they're different, or, oh, they come from different places, so that, like we said, like you said, that you can't like really like relate. Like some people feel like they couldn't relate to other races just because they don't look the same, physically, but doesn't mean that they're not worthy of friendship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you're not the same.
Right.
You have the same personality or the same interests.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
And even like the Bible says, like we're all created in God's image, and like there's this like one quote that's going around. It's like there's one race, and that's the human race. Like we should all stereotyping and judging book by its covers, and having this like respect for each other, because if you just start stereotyping and judging book by its covers, it's not gonna get anywhere. Because like what's the good in that? Like you're kind of being not like sort of like a hypocrite, but in the sense that's like you're saying you're like a Christian and you follow God, yet you're being a racist, and like you're not actually believing what like God says, that we're all His children and we're created in His image. You're just stereotyping, and especially when it comes to like race, and it comes to like a bunch of like this whole like thing going on right now with like the riots and protesting. Like, are you actually protesting that you don't like this race, or like you don't like how this race is not being appreciated, or are you just protesting because you want to go and steal and riot and do all this stuff? You don't really care about the race because we're all should be treated as equals, not just that one race should be equality to us. It should be all of our races being equal to one another.
All right, so what was your first thought when you heard or saw about what happened to George Floyd?
Honestly, when I first saw what happened, it was really hard to watch, because as I've grown up and watched the news, I've seen so many cases where a black person was killed by a white police officer, and sometimes it was hard to tell the situation because the person was armed, or maybe, they were running away, or there was some sort of argument going on. And so it was hard to like see the whole situation in the bigger picture. But seeing the videos that were posted on the news, it was obvious that, what was happening was not right, and it was wrong, and the person could not breathe, and they were not fighting. The only thing they were fighting for was to breathe. And when people tried to intercede, they were, pepper sprayed or whatever happened. But I honestly, it was so shocking to me to see, because I've never really seen something so like blatantly wrong between, between two different races. And so it honestly offended me that something like that would happen, and it really broke my heart that did happen. And I automatically knew this is an issue, and it kind of stuck out to me more than it ever has before. So
Yeah, honestly, when I first saw it, I was just heartbroken, because I was like you said, like it was you see that a lot on the news and stuff, where a black man or a black woman was killed by a police officer, and it's always a thought in the back of your mind. Well, it's like, okay, well, was this really racist, or was this just like, did the police officer really believe that what he was doing was right? But in this case, when I first saw like the video of George Floyd, it was obvious that there was something wrong there, and very obvious that this was not okay. And it was obvious that that policeman was just doing the wrong thing, and that's really what hurt. And I think that's what's hurting a lot of people, is that it was so obvious.
yeah.
I don't know about most people, but I know for me at least, without even watching the video, just hearing that this thing had happened, I immediately, just like that, made a conclusion on the entire issue. Before even like knowing what really happened to this guy, what tragically happened to this guy, only knowing his name, George Floyd, I made a conclusion about the entire situation, and even going into that video, I held on to that conclusion, and then just seeing, watching the video, and then seeing all like the subsequent things come out, like the extra footage, and like just the response to it. it definitely just added to that initial conclusion. But I feel that like me and for a lot of other people, stuff like this just kind of just like if it doesn't shatter, then it really does shake your worldview when it comes to these problems that are so clearly problems. You going into that, especially in the case of George Floyd, like you can't look at it the same way as you always did. You really do have to look at it in a new light. And when you do that, like everyone gains something else, and I do think that's what the entire nation is doing. They're kind of realizing this new perspective.
It honestly reminded me of like how the LA riots started. Like it started off with a video of a black man being domestically like abused by the police, and then from that situation escalated more and more until it finally a riot broke out in LA, and all this chaos started happening. And like even now seeing that video, obviously everyone pretty much is talking about it, and now like there's a whole bunch of protests, riots, and all that craziness and chaos that we saw before going on now. And so it's really just showing that like this whole issue has always been a thing, even if it's like the LA riots had stopped like in the past, but now it's like getting brought back up again because of domestic just racism in our country and like domestic violence towards black people. And like it's honestly for me it was like really sad to see it coming again, but it was also like scaring me because now I know it's like, oh, it's probably going to escalate again and repeat history as we've already seen it happen. So, yeah.
Okay, so this is another one with like a few different things you guys can talk about, but are you on social media? What are your thoughts about the riots versus protesting? Well, I guess we'll just start there.
I think it's really hard to see the riots happening because it's really scary, and I was actually supposed to work yesterday, and my work got closed down because it was a safety concern, and they didn't want any of us getting hurt or any customers getting hurt, so they did close down our store. And I drove through where I work, and the Target was closed down as well. Everything was kind of just closed down. But there was no protesters there yet. But the hard part is, it's sad to know that people feel the need to be violent in order to get their point across. And I feel like it's hard to see that because we were raised in a country where we have a right to peacefully protest. But it's even like worse to think that people think that doesn't work and that they're not getting their point across through that. So as much as it breaks my heart to see violence happening, it's sad to think that people believe they have to resort to that. And it's sad to see people getting hurt from that and seeing others, like being scared from that. Like I was scared, to go to work and, if that were to happen. But I feel like it's just, it seems like a last resort option, and that's really, really heartbreaking.
For me personally, I work downtown, and yesterday there was a pretty big protest right in front of where I work, and I was told not to come into work because safety reasons, obviously, and the store was actually closed. But I just kind of remember being sad because I'm seeing the riots, and I'm seeing, especially, I've seen this sign that has been made a few times, like either on social media or even like downtown when they were protesting. I saw a sign that said, "If you're not angry, you're not listening." And that made me very upset because I don't think that your reaction to the situation should necessarily be anger. I understand that you can be angry about it, but I don't think that should be an action that you're taking. Like, I think a lot of these riots are because people are angry, and I don't think that's a good way to show that you're upset. I think that I'm personally, I think that, if you are listening, you're going to do something about it. You're going to use your own voice, but you're not going to be angry. I don't think that's helping anyone. And seeing these riots, and it's just making more chaos and more violence, which is not okay at all. And now people's safety is, at risk. And, even speaking for me, because I was told, literally don't come into work. And that's just kind of, mind-blowing to me. It's we do have a right to protest peacefully, and I think there can be good that comes out of protests a lot of the times. I think people do need to be heard, and they have that right to, stand up for what they believe in, but when it becomes a safety issue, it's not helping anybody.
Me personally, just opening up my phone, it seems like every day, and every time I do, I'm just flooded with like whether it's like a newsreels, clips, articles, and just seeing people literally being beaten in the streets, protesters getting things thrown at them, cops being just spit on and yelled at. It's honestly just it's hard to look at. Every single time, just seeing something new, something to add to the harshness of the topic. That makes sense. Seeing something else that's just fueling the fire, fueling the anger from both sides. It's hard to look at, and oftentimes, whenever I'm just like looking at whatever thing it is, I have to like find out. All right, well then, what happened after this? What happened after that? And then just seeing more and more injustice come by this one injustice, I don't think it's right at all. But I am glad that people are out there protesting, because I think the people that don't think they should be protesting, I think it just comes down to the fact of if people feel that there's an injustice, being in this country, then that means that they can protest for that. And you can't really say anything against that because it's how they feel, how we live in a country where we're able to bring change and to talk about these things. So let them talk, I will say. But just seeing like all the terribleness, all the hate that's breeding from these protests, it's hard to see the change that's coming from it. Like there's a very thin line that I've been seeing from the news and stuff between a protest and a riot. And more often it seems like these riots are happening. What doesn't make it any better is that the news isn't really covering these protests. Like maybe like there'll be two. It's all about the riots. It's all about people smashing windows coming into the CNN building. It's all about people looting the stores in LA, and just signaling that. I don't see how anyone can agree with it. It's easy to understand their message, of course, that that they're trying to bring awareness, trying to bring a bigger call to action by doing these businesses, and it's somewhat understandable, even, for example, with Malcolm X, he varied a lot from Martin Luther King, they had the same goal, and of course, different ways of going about it, and even though I don't agree with these protests, yeah, it makes sense that, why, all right, I want to bring attention in a bigger way, okay, that's fine, but then why are you smashing small businesses? Why are you going to the Gucci store and harming an Italian business? These things aren't about bringing change. It's just about getting things. It's sad to see selfishness start to intrude on an injustice. But it's just what's happening, and I don't think it's right at all. I think that we should be going about it in a very different way. And even looking at history, doing this, it didn't help. The only thing that really did help was having a message and going about that peacefully. Yeah. And that's why Martin Luther King is the person that we view him today.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think especially people get filled with hate to the point where it's they're hating on things for the wrong reasons. Like you said, with the if you're not angry, then you're not doing anything about it, and it's just people start bashing you for having your opinion of peace and peacefully protesting and not getting angry and rioting. It's completely wrong because they start bashing other people to the point it's you guys disgust me if you're saying that not posting about anything, you're not even saying anything about the situation. You have to be as angry and as disgusted and as upset about this as everyone else is because it's wrong. It's well, that's just hate in your heart now. You're just taking out on everyone that you for any excuse possible just because you're not getting your way with a lot of things. And even to the point where it's they're raiding, they're looting, they're doing all this craziness. Even locally, here in Riverside, talking about burning the library down. We can't get at the small businesses anymore, so we should try getting at something that the government's a part of, the library. It's just all of this is hate building up into your body and your soul. Just who you are as a person is really coming out of you just because this one little situation's happening, and it's really sad to see. Because that's not gonna you can't fix hate with hate. You have to fix hate with love.
Yeah.
So.
We always say the future belongs to youth. How does being a Christian shape how you feel about all this and how you act and what can you do?
I think the best thing you can do is, like you were saying earlier, just listen to people and be there for them and talk to them about it if they want to talk about it. And I've seen it like on social media, it going around a lot, the part of the Bible where it says Jesus left the 99 sheep to chase down the one. And if that one sheep, is lost or is hurting, you need to leave everyone else and go chase it down. And you need to be there for the people that are hurting, and you need to be there for them. Even if it doesn't mean that you're forgetting about everyone else, and it doesn't mean that God forgot about all the other sheep. He still loves us all. But when one is hurting, you need to be there with them, and you need to be able to listen to them or be there for them, whatever they may need. And so I think that's the best thing that you can do right now, especially if you're not, being personally affected by it. So.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely a heart issue with a lot of people. Anybody who has hatred or anger in their heart towards people of other races, it's definitely a heart thing, and it's something that needs to fix inward before you can express that outwardly. And even on Sunday, when Elijah said that prayer is like one of the biggest things that this world needs right now, and if the church isn't praying, who is? Like we as Christians have to do that. Like we have to be praying constantly, because prayer changes things, and God is listening to us, and he loves us, and I don't think that this is what God wants. And people that think that Christians that are silent are, doing something wrong, like going back to the whole social media thing, if you're not listening, then what was it? If you're
not upset.
If you're not angry, you're not listening. It's like, no, I can be very upset about this, but either I'm expressing that within my family and friends. I'm praying. I'm seeking the Lord in this time. I'm praying for others who I know might not have that right state of mind. Just all these things that we can be doing as Christians. I think we just need to look up and really just ask God for guidance and wisdom in this time, because he sees it and he's in this with us.
Yeah. I think it's like we need to be showing love to everyone right now, like responding in love and not in hate. Because like people are like really just like going out there and like trying to get like they really hate the cops. Like they like 100% hate them. And and they think that just because you say Black Lives Matter, you're on like that team and you hate the cops as well. But in reality, shouldn't be like that at all. It should be like, we do believe Black Lives Matter, but we shouldn't be hating the police. The Bible says like, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Saying that like, we're all not perfect. We're all like, there's bad things happening in our world today, and this happens to be one of them as well. And I'm not even trying to like defend the cops for what they did is right, because honestly, not right at all. But and God does believe in justice. It says like, God is a very just God. But everyone is worthy of forgiveness. That's like the beauty of God's grace, is that no matter like there is no sin too deep. There's like nothing that can separate us from His love and His grace. So we should be like praying. You should be showing others that we can be forgiving. We could forgive forgive how He forgave us. So.
And also another thing is, like, I see a lot of people, especially with the riots, they're trying to seek revenge, or they're trying to get back. But I think that's very unbiblical. I believe that God will bring judgment, and that is not our job to punish or get back necessarily. Like, I think, like you said, we need to show love, and that's not the way to do it.
I see a lot of people talking about change, that this needs to change and that needs to change, right? And the thing about that is that the Bible doesn't talk about how to be changed. The Bible doesn't talk about how to make change in your world or society. What it does say about change is that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, that He does not change. Right? So I think the problem here is that people are trying to make change by posting a black square. People are trying to expect change to just happen by reposting the tweet, right? And in this world, that may talk about change, but it's not actually saying what needs to change, giving a proposal on how things need to change. And I really do feel that the only way to see change in society, the only way to even begin to see things that you want to happen is to lean into God, to lean into His grace, to look at Him and that will inevitably change how you view people,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
There is no racism in Christ. It's that we are all fallen people. We're all sinners. We also desperately need grace. And it's when you look at that, it's when you see the world through that lens, you're able to love people. You're able to enact justice. You're able to be that change that you want to see. And that's what the world needs right now. They need to be more like Christ.